You know what they say, better late than never. So, after a crazy busy spring and summer, I finally had some time to film my ranking of every movie I saw in 2021. I have 49 movies on this list. If it's not on the list, I didn't see it, therefore I cannot offer my opinion on it. Here are some films that I wanted to see but unfortunately did not get a chance to. Without further ado, let's get started. In last place, at number 49, is Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Disney Plus's Diary of a Wimpy Kid had some okay animation, but failed at just about everything else. Wrath of Man was a fun John Wick ripoff with some good action, but also a bad story and some unlikable characters. Number 47, Army of the Dead. Zack Snyder's newest zombie movie had some fun set pieces, but an uninteresting story and underdeveloped characters. While Eternals was beautifully shot and edited, the characters felt miraculously bland and uninteresting. On top of that, Chloe Zhao's artistic directing style constantly clashed with the Marvel template. The movie could have been a deep exploration of mythological characters, but felt surprisingly unconfident and disorganized. Godzilla vs. Kong delivered exactly what I expected it to. A fun, dumb, action spectacle movie with some good laughs and a lot of fun set pieces. This movie features some mildly entertaining human characters, but gives Kong a lot more depth than you'd expect. The movie does exactly what it tries to do and revels in it. Number 44, Cherry. The Russo brothers' follow-up to Endgame felt surprisingly amateur. The color correction was poor and the story was unengaging. On top of that, there's way too many moments where the movie feels like it's trying to prove itself by being artsy and subversive. Even a solid performance from Tom Holland couldn't save this one. Overall, this movie felt more like the Russo brothers trying to make a point than trying to make a good movie. The little things suffered from an overly complicated story and forgettable characters. Number 42, Old. The newest M. Night Shyamalan movie had some good acting and makeup and some genuinely creepy moments, but suffered from the usual Shyamalan stilted dialogue and awkward characters. The Tomorrow War was a fun, dumb, turn-your-brain-off action movie that didn't make a lot of sense, but was at least fun. Till Death was a suspenseful thriller with some good scares and a good performance from Megan Fox. Venom Let There Be Carnage had a fun performance from Tom Hardy, but felt too short. Number 38, Halloween Kills. The latest Halloween film was full of some fantastic carnage candy and some very well-produced flashback scenes. However, the story is all over the place, the characters feel inconsistent, and the movie can't decide how hard it wants to commit to featuring social commentary. If all you want is a dark, violent slasher movie, you'll enjoy it, but if you want more, you'll probably be disappointed. Spencer featured a fantastic performance from Kristen Stewart and looked fantastic on 85mm film, but failed to feature a captivating story and relied too much on the audience's knowledge of the real people the story is based on. Number 36, Belfast. Kenneth Branagh put a lot of care and passion into this film, and it shows. It feels very precise and detail-oriented. The performances feel very grounded and of the era. However, the storyline feels slow and there is some tonal inconsistency. Number 35, Black Widow. We finally got a Black Widow solo film, and it was fine. A typical Marvel spy espionage thriller. Johansson is good, and Pugh and Harbour are arguably better, but the movie, especially the third act, feels very wrung through the Marvel machine. Number 34, House of Gucci. Ridley Scott's second adult drama of the year turned out to be a mid-tier Oscar bait biopic. The acting is good, especially from Jared Leto, but the film overall feels pretty unmemorable. Number 33, Fear Street Part 2, 1978. The middle Fear Street movie was the weakest of the three, but still wasn't horrible. It captured the vibe and aesthetic of a 1970s camp slasher very well, but also featured a lot of underdeveloped characters and a very slow plotline. The Night House featured a solid performance from Rebecca Hall and some pretty good tension, but was let down by an anticlimactic ending. Fear Street Part 3, 1966 was a satisfying conclusion to the trilogy. It tied the mythology together nicely and concluded the character arcs well. However, the two parts of this film clashed tonally and the transition felt rough. Don't Look Up provided some good laughs and some clever satire, but was let down by feeling very preachy and condescending, as well as just not being as grounded as it thinks it is. The movie feels like a bunch of rich people who are very detached from reality designed a film for their view of a regular, normal person while having no idea what a regular, normal person is actually like. I'm willing to bet that the only reason this movie got nominated for Best Picture was because the people at the Academy liked the message, not based on the merits of the film itself. The Map of Tiny Perfect Things was an interesting subversion of the time loop movie, but featured a very contrived ending. In the Heights was a fun, uplifting musical number with some great performances and some fantastic musical numbers. Fear Street Part 1 1994 was a solid introduction to these characters and this franchise's lore. While it does rely on some cliches and archetypes, it blended them together in a way that felt unique and that made for a fun experience. The Woman in the Window was a mid-tier psychological thriller with some good performances but some awkward writing. The Lost Daughter had some good performances, but didn't explore what it wanted to explore very well and suffered from a slow story. Number 24, Luca. Pixar's film about Italian sea monsters felt more like a Studio Ghibli movie than a Pixar movie, but in a good way. It's a very personal story about friendship and identity. While it may not be the most accessible film, it is very fun and original. Raya and the Last Dragon was a great reminder that Disney films can still be fun and creative. Drive My Car tried to explore some interesting characters and ideas, but was dragged down by an overstuffed story that made it difficult to figure out what the movie was supposed to be about at its core. Number 21, Tick Tick Boom. Andrew Garfield leads this movie spectacularly. He was 100% deserving of that Oscar nomination. However, the movie does suffer from some underdeveloped side characters and a story that feels very cut and dry. Bringing us into the top 20 is The French Dispatch. Anderson's tribute to American reporters has a lot of laughs and a lot of gags, and also a lot of insight into the world of journalism. However, this movie went a little bit too Wes Anderson for my taste and felt a little incomprehensible at times. Number 19, Licorice Pizza. I love the style and aesthetic of the film. It perfectly captures the vibe of California in the 1970s and manages to look and feel like a film that was shot in the 1970s. I also really like the characters. They feel perfectly cast and have very well thought out and nuanced characterizations. However, the movie's endorsement of a relationship between a 15-year-old boy and a 25-year-old woman left a bad taste in my mouth. Number 18, King Richard. What this movie does best is dive into the mind of Richard Williams and show how his choices, while they seemed crazy to others, ended up paying off. Will Smith brought his absolute A-game, delivering one of his best performances in years. This movie is very good at addressing things that movies like this typically address, but not doing it in a way that feels cliched or repetitive, but instead a way that adds depth and nuance to the story. Number 17, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Marvel's first martial arts film offers a strong hero and a surprisingly deep villain. The action is fantastic and the film offers so much more than your typical Marvel film. Number 16, West Side Story. Steven Spielberg brought us a remake that's arguably better than the original. Just kidding, I haven't seen the original. That being said, Spielberg does a great job bringing this musical to life. The acting, singing, choreography, and dancing all complement his style really well. While yes, the story could be considered familiar, Spielberg does enough with it so that it stays engaging throughout the entire run. Number 15, The Power of the Dog. Jane Campion's Western drama features some psychologically fascinating characters as well as some beautiful cinematography and directing. It also explores a lot of deep, nuanced themes in a way that I don't think has been done before. All four leads are at their best, delivering some of the best performances of the year. Overall, The Power of the Dog is a very subtle movie that won't be for everyone, but definitely has something to offer. Number 14, Malignant. James Wan's latest thriller took me by surprise just because of how conscious it was of its tone and its tonal shifts.
Where is my mind?
I went into this movie expecting a typical supernatural horror, but instead what I got was a campy horror comedy that steps into action, crime, mystery, and so much more. What I love about this movie is just how hard it commits to being absurd, bananas, off the wall. This movie definitely gets the award of the biggest surprise of the year. Number 13, Nightmare Alley. I really loved all of the thought and care put into this movie. All of the aesthetic components, such as the sound design, the production design, the cinematography, etc., are all perfect. The story drags a bit at the beginning, but once the protagonists arrive in the big city, it really kicks off. Watching the protagonist slowly make worse and worse choices was captivating. By the end, you realize this is the only place the story really could have ended. Number 12, Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm gonna get a lot of flack for putting this movie this low on the list. Don't get me wrong, I love aspects of it. The third act is everything Spider-Man fans could have asked for. However, it's not perfect. The first act of the film feels constructed in a way that would deliver the fan service in the third act, and a lot of the specific plot beats involving Peter and Doctor Strange feel a little bit contrived and somewhat out of character. While the fan service in the third act more than makes up for the sloppy first act, I can't just ignore the story issues in the first act. Number 11, Ghostbusters Afterlife. This movie perfectly blended the feeling of the original Ghostbusters with a more modern Stranger Things-esque tone. The new characters are a ton of fun, and the film pays tribute to the original films perfectly. Bringing us into the top 10 is Lamb. I thought this movie was just going to be a bunch of pretentious nonsense, but it ended up being one of my favorites of the year. The performances, especially Noomi Rapace, are fantastic, and the film is beautifully shot and edited. While it does sometimes rely a bit too much on symbolism, it still provides the visceral, captivating experience you want from an A24 movie. Number 9, Free Guy. I was looking forward to this movie because it's one of the very few original blockbusters we've had these past few years. What I got was a surprisingly touching genre mashup with Ryan Reynolds playing Ryan Reynolds. What makes this movie great is how it understands video game culture and manages to both celebrate and critique it. Overall, this movie delivered everything I wanted it to. The action, the laughs, the references, but also had a ton of heart and some surprisingly effective emotional notes. Number 8, The Suicide Squad. This movie was the perfect soft reboot the Suicide Squad needed. It delivered on the craziness, the excessiveness, and the zaniness you'd want from a Suicide Squad movie. James Gunn just knows how to take fantastical characters and make them feel relatable and complex. Overall, this is one of my favorite DCEU movies, and I cannot wait for a sequel. Number 7, Pig. It's hard to describe what makes this movie so special. Part of it is Nicolas Cage giving a very grounded, very serious performance. Part of it is the way the film subverts the John Wick template into a tragic drama. Part of it is the intentional juxtaposition of the realistic with the sensational and the tragedy with the comedy. Overall, this is a movie I don't quite know what to make of, but I definitely enjoy it and I definitely appreciate it. Number 6, Last Night in Soho. Edgar Wright's Giallo-inspired thriller came so close to being in my top 5. The flashback sequences are filmmaking at its finest, with some very detailed costuming and set design. Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy lead this movie fantastically. They play characters who are put in very similar situations but react very differently. The only thing holding this movie back is the sloppy third act. Specifically, the supernatural elements didn't quite feel as well incorporated into this movie as they could have. Bringing us into the top 5 is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. The latest movie from Phil Lord and Chris Miller does what they do best. It examines a piece of pop culture in a way that is very self-aware and very much aware of the larger landscape of popular culture. While the movie does have a lot of laughs and spectacle, it also tells a story about a family trying to overcome tensions and misunderstanding in a way that feels relatable and compelling. The characters are a ton of fun, the animation is distinct and lively, and the movie wraps up in a way that feels very over-the-top and goofy, but also very sincere and touching. Number 4, Coda. This movie perfectly positions the audience into the protagonist's situation. We understand why she feels the way she does, why she makes the decisions that she does, and why those feelings and decisions would create conflict with her deaf parents. This movie perfectly gives the audience a glimpse into the life that some people actually live, while at the same time being entertaining and heartwarming. The acting is fantastic, the dialogue is beautifully written, and the movie as a whole is absolutely fantastic. Number 3, The Last Duel. Ridley Scott's return to mid-budget adult dramas was one of the most overlooked movies of the year. It's a movie that uses its structure very intentionally and goes to show how differences in perspective can warp the way an audience sees a story. It also does a good job adding more and more depth to each principal character by showing the audience the way other characters reacted to their decisions. Overall, it's a shame that this movie bombed at the box office because this is the type of movie we need more of. Our runner-up, Zack Snyder's Justice League. The long-awaited team-up of everyone's favorite superheroes was exactly what I wanted it to be. Zack Snyder managed to conclude his trilogy in a way that will satisfy fans, but also staying true to Zack Snyder's original vision. I think Snyder learned a lot of lessons from Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and used those lessons to deliver the film we've all been waiting for. The movie is not without flaw. You just have to look at it as what it is, an extended cut of a movie that we never got. Yes, some scenes could be shorter. Yes, some sequences feel very drawn out. This movie was Snyder's one chance to throw anything and everything he wanted into this movie with no limitations and full creative control, and I can appreciate it for that. But my favorite movie of 2021 was Dune. Now granted, this movie does feel like half a movie. It doesn't have the most satisfying or cathartic ending. We'll have to wait until part 2 to get that. However, I loved the first half of this story. Denis Villeneuve and his crew managed to tell a space fantasy story in a way that feels grounded, that feels mature, and that doesn't feel like it's trying to be a universally accessible blockbuster film. While watching this film, you get transported to another world. The production design, sound design, costuming, etc. are all very intentional and going for a very specific tone that the movie hits perfectly. So that's it, that's my list. What were y'all's favorite and least favorite movies of 2021? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys want to see more movie rankings, click this playlist right here. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.